Welcome to Phrasal Verb Practice. This is the place to learn real English, one phrasal verb at a time. My name is Marissa, and I'll walk you through this learning journey. Hello, everybody. Hope you're all doing great. Today we're diving into the phrasal verb cut off. So let's talk about what cut off really means. This phrasal verb has a few common uses, but they all share the same basic idea. First, we often use cut off when someone interrupts another person. When we say cut off here, we mean stopping someone from finishing what they're saying. For example, she cut him off before he finished his sentence. Sorry to cut you off, but we're out of time. He kept talking and cut her off again. Now, another very common use of cut off is when a supply stops. This could be electricity, water, money, or a service. For example, the power was cut off during the storm. They cut off the internet by mistake. His phone service was cut off. We also use cut off when something or someone becomes isolated. Here, the idea is losing connection, and we often use from. For example, the snow cut off the town from the highway. She felt cut off from her friends. The village was cut off for days. There's also a physical meaning. When we say cut off physically, we mean removing part of something by cutting it. For example, he cut off a piece of paper. She cut off her hair. The label was cut off the box. So the key idea behind cut off is ending a connection. It can be communication, it can be a service, it can be access, or it can be a physical part. Now, just to connect this to other languages for a moment. In Spanish, it's often cortar, interrumpir, or dejar sin. In French, couper or interrompere. In Portuguese, cortar or interromper. In Italian, tagliare or interrompere. In German, abschneiden or unterbrechen. In Japanese, kiru or jadansuru. And in Chinese, chieduan or chungduan. The idea stays very similar. So when do people usually use cut off? People use cut off when someone interrupts, when a service suddenly stops, when a place becomes isolated, or when something is physically removed. Let's hear a few examples to pull it all together. She cut him off during the meeting. The electricity was cut off last night. The storm cut off the town from the road. He cut off the damaged part. Sorry to cut you off, but we need to move on. Now let's talk about how we actually use cut off in a sentence. Cut off is separable. That means we can place the object in different positions. Cut off plus object, cut plus object, plus off. For example, cut off the call. Cut the call off. But with pronouns, the pronoun goes in the middle. So we say, cut it off. Cut them off. And when we're talking about isolation, we often add from, like cut off from the city or cut off from help. The verb form doesn't change. Present, past, or participle, it's always cut off. All right, now let's practice. First, you'll listen to a short text about everyday life. Then, you'll hear another one in a professional or office situation. Are you ready? Let's start. Yesterday started like a normal day, but a few small things reminded me how often life can be cut off without warning. In the morning, I was talking to my sister on the phone, telling her about my plans for the weekend, when the call suddenly dropped. I tried calling back, but the signal was bad and we were completely cut off for a few minutes. It was frustrating, but also kind of funny once we reconnected. Later that day, I was making lunch when the lights went out. The power had been cut off because of maintenance in the area. No warning, no reminder, just silence. I laughed, opened a window, and decided to eat something simple instead. Being temporarily cut off from electricity made me slow down more than I expected. In the afternoon, I met a friend for coffee. She was telling a long story, and I had to stop her gently. I said, "Sorry to cut you off, but I need to pick up my kids soon." She smiled and understood. Moments like that happen all the time, and no one takes it personally. On the way home, traffic was backed up because a small road was cut off due to construction. Cars had to turn around, and everyone looked confused. It was annoying, but also a reminder that routes can be cut off just as suddenly as plans. That evening, I tried to relax and stay present. I decided to cut off notifications on my phone for a few hours. No messages, no alerts. Being intentionally cut off from constant updates felt surprisingly peaceful. During dinner, my dad mentioned how a storm years ago had cut off their town from the main highway for days. No deliveries, no visitors. Everyone had to rely on each other. Stories like that make you realize how real being cut off can be. By the end of the day, I noticed something. Whether it's a call being cut off, power being cut off, or choosing to cut off distractions, these moments change how we respond. Sometimes they interrupt us. Sometimes they protect us. But they always remind us to pause and adjust. Great! That was the first text. How many times did you hear the phrasal verb of the day? Now let's move on to the second text. The issue came up during a regular team meeting. One person was explaining an idea when another teammate jumped in and cut him off mid-sentence. It wasn't intentional, but the room went quiet for a second. Our manager smiled and said, "Sorry to cut you off, but let's come back to that point in a minute." Everyone relaxed, and the conversation moved on. Later that morning, we ran into a technical problem. The internet was suddenly cut off across the floor. Emails stopped loading, messages wouldn't send, and the shared calendar froze. For a while, we were completely cut off from the systems we needed to work. Instead of panicking, the team gathered to plan what we could do offline. While IT worked on the issue, my manager suggested we cut off non-essential notifications for the rest of the day. Fewer alerts helped us stay focused once things were back online. When access was restored, it felt good not to be constantly interrupted. In the afternoon, a client call started late because the connection kept dropping. Twice, the call was cut off right in the middle of important points. Each time, we apologized and picked up where we left off. No one made a big deal out of it. These things happen. At the same time, security sent an email explaining that a former contractor's access had been cut off. Badges were deactivated, and system access was removed. It was routine, but necessary, and handled quietly. Toward the end of the day, a power issue in another building cut off part of the operations team from their usual workspace. They were temporarily cut off from clients and had to reroute calls. The rest of us stepped in to help where we could. Before leaving, I made one last decision. I chose to cut off work messages for the evening. Not forever, just enough to recharge. In a workplace full of constant connections, knowing when to cut off can actually keep everything running smoothly. Great, that was the second text, and that's all for today. Thank you so much for following this channel, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye!